And there's a parable. Do you know the parable about the talents that Jesus?
That's my favorite parable. Actually, I was very lucky in college to run into that, and it became a very important part of my life through my formative 18 to 23 or so
Yeah.
years. Yeah, it's the most important. It's so I've given you dominion over a few things, and now you should be master over many.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Good and faithful servant. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's like build your take command over what small arena that you have,
Mm-hmm.
prove your worth with it, build the skills. I even did a
Yeah.
podcast about the parable of the talents. Believe it or not,
Yeah.
build your skill with it, gain mastery over a few things, and then you're ready to take on more and bigger and broader challenges and to
Yeah.
grow, whether that's growing spiritually within yourself, whether it's growing within your community, whether it's growing professionally, whatever it happens to be.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very Jordan Peterson, clean your room kind of stuff too. Clean your room
Yeah.
first, get your
Yeah.
room in order, then go out and change the world.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's good stuff.
It
It's
is.
absolutely key.
It to me, it's one of the things that totally destroys, even if you're not, you don't have to be a Christian to understand these principles. A lot of these things are universal truths. It's just true. If you do this, you will get that. you
Yeah,
know.
right.
Uh, so it's a great way to destroy this whole narrative of, like everybody has to think alike, be alike, do alike, especially if you are Christian. Like I can't. That is still mind-boggling to me that Christian people think that, just we have to be lock and step with, with everyone just because you are a girl or because you're black or, you happen to have more melanin than someone else. I said recently at a speaking event that I was doing, we put so much emphasis on skin color when it's just God's way of showing his love of variety. Okay. That's it. Like it's meaningless. It does not think, it doesn't reason, it doesn't form opinions. It it's not that. It's like as valuable as like your hair. It's going in the dirt at the end of the day. Okay.
That's
It's
right.
not,
That's right.
your soul does not have a color. It's I think that those are more important things that we should be focusing on, and the things that we're leaving in our children, not
That's right.
these outside appearances. It's so frustrating to see these types of people and the types of things that that they're focused on. But
I'll
that's
go deep with you for a second if you
okay.
want.
Yeah,
So a
let's
lot of
nerd out.
people,
Go ahead.
yeah, a lot of people don't know Marxism very well. It's a real shame in the American education system. We haven't ever really, we don't learn it's purposed. The Marxists
Right.
took over education, and we don't learn about Marxism
Of
now.
course.
So when you're ignorant of it, you can't see it when it's creeping on you.
Hmm.
But Marx had a whole belief system of his own based upon labor. Why do you think it's so focused? Marxism is so focused on labor. It's not just a theory of value and of economics.
Hmm.
He believed that. So it's very difficult to get this because we don't think this way anymore. But there are kind of two big views, philosophically speaking. One is that the world is out there, and you see the world, and you bring it in through your senses, and it shapes who you are. The other is that you create the world in your head. The world isn't really out there, and you create the world. So they're called realism versus anti-realism. And Marx
Okay.
was anti-realist. All the romantics were, and Marx was kind of caught up in the romantic tradition. And so he believed that man makes the world and so makes himself through labor. This is why the hammer and sickle are on the communist flag. They're the kinds of work that are considered authentic and genuine, kind of labor that Marx really respected, so to speak, and said that are real work because you're out there shaping the world to make it into something. So you're taking the jungle and turning it into a garden, if you will.
Hmm.
And you can
Hmm.
see the genesis right there,
Hmm.
right? The garden, you're remaking the Garden of Eden.
Yeah.
And so when you're making that, you're also making yourself. And so his theology is that you're making man into socialist man by making the world into socialist world. And so when you start to hear stuff like you got to do the work or whatever, it's the same do the work as the hammer and sickle are reflected. Go out and change the world. But the object now becomes like your skin color. So that becomes the place where you're building the garden is in your skin color or in your sexual identity. So this is
Hmm.
why they adopt why why Kimberly Crenshaw, when she writes in Mapping the Margins, that there's a fundamental difference, she says, between I'm a person who happens to be black, which she
Right.
says strains for a certain universality. And it says, in effect, I am first a person. Imagine being mad about that. But then
Right.
she says there's a fundamental difference between I'm a person who happens to be black and the statement I am black. And she says that becomes an anchor for subjectivity. And that's, of course, exactly what Marx is talking about. That subjective view that the world only exists in your own head. And the problem is the world exists in my head and the world exists in your head. And you and I might not see the world the same way. So we're not creating the same world.
Right.
But if we all get on the same page, now we're creating the same world. And so you become, I remove the objectivity of you by you and I having exactly the same values. But now the work becomes to reify your skin color as an identity factor, to reify your gender status as an identity factor, to reify or even deify, really, all of these external characteristics that should mean less and less and less, and to turn those into something that becomes more and more and more central. And that's why you always hear them saying center this, center that, center race, center sex, center gender in our discussions. And so when they say do the work, that's literally what they're talking. They're reinvoking Marx.
Wow.
Right there. It's Marx's, not his basic economic philosophy, which is all a reflection of this. It's actually Marx's underlying theological presuppositions about how the world works and the role of labor within that. But now the labor is not physical labor, it's cultural labor. And
Right.
cultural labor is interpreted through identity. So you doing the work as a black woman means that you have to spend all this time thinking about what it means to be a black woman. And the way that you're going to do that is by, as Crenshaw tells you, I, as a white man, am imposing that upon you. And so you have to adopt those stereotypes in strategic retaliation against that in order to break free of it. But you do so in clownish forms, as Marcuse had it. So why on earth do they always look like that? Because they're adopting stereotypes in clownish form to exaggerate and break the spell of them. Yeah. Do the work.
That brings up too the queer theory, because with the you have to some of the writings, and I don't remember the names of the folks who were writing this thing, but so when they're talking about sex education, this comprehensive sex education, they're saying that you have to, they do these exercises with the teachers who are then supposed to bring it into the classroom, that you have to, kids are naturally going to be uncomfortable when they start to talk about these things. So what you have to do is you have to you talk about it in such vulgar terms. You basically, like the woman with the crazy hair, you're showing the most outrageous thing. So then when you start to bring it in, and it's, you're not talking about something so outrageous, just it's a little more it's a little closer to normal, still crazy, but a little closer to normal. Now it doesn't seem as bad. You have so gotten them accustomed to hearing these crazy things, that now when they hear, these more, it's still crazy, when you're talking about like penises and, vaginas and things like that in front of like 5-year-olds,
right?
Maybe it's not so bad, because before you were talking about something, you were talking
real lewd,
right?
Real lewd.
Let's just say that. But
Let's
they
just go there,
actually say that. They actually tell them to do that. There's so many things like going through my head that I want to talk about.
Well,
but
I mean, just as a funny little quirk there, by the way, you mentioned comprehensive sex education, and this is just something, I don't know if there's any real meaning to this, but I know how these people operate. So it sticks out to me every time. Comprehensive sex education, CSE, right? Okay, so what? Well, child sexual exploitation is what they call sex trafficking, CSE. And it's like, I bet you that's not a coincidence. Just like critically responsive teaching or culturally responsive teaching. Culturally responsive teaching and critical race theory are both CRT. I bet you that's not a coincidence. And
none of this stuff is a coincidence.